Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the March and Silver MMA show. We are back. Lenny's back. University's back on the way. And I'm here again. Hopefully, we get some sort of schedule going again. And yes, we are here back again with my co host, Oscar Silva. An absolute pleasure. Oscar, how are you?
I'm doing good. It's been a minute. Feels real good to be back with my original co-host here. And we have an interesting main event to break down here at flyweight. We just had a bomb dropped on us by Dana White. So I say we cover that news very quickly before we get into the fight night tonight. UFC 310, December 7th. The main event is the UFC welterweight champion Bilal Muhammad defending against Shavkat Rakhmonov, the undefeated finisher. And the co-main event is for the flyweight title, Alexandre Pantoja defending against the debutant from Ryzen, Kai Asakura. That is going to be a phenomenal fight. This is really going to showcase some of this awesome international talent that the UFC has. This could be truly star-making performances for these fighters. And I think anybody who doesn't know who these guys are going to learn, especially in the case of Kaya Sakura, who I think has been UFC ready for a while now. He got signed several months ago, has a victory over Manel Kape, one of the top contenders in the division. So, what do you make of this great card? Also on the card is Vicente Luque versus the returning Nick Diaz, Gane and Volkov in a rematch. Movsar Evloev, Aljamain Sterling, and Dominic Reyes versus Anthony Smith. So they've gone out of their way to stack this card. I really like it. It kind of shows you the reveal of these fights. Also shows you which champions are going to wait until next year to come back. And we're talking about Murad Davashvili, Dricus Duplessis. Some of those names are going to wait a little bit longer, but man, am I excited to see Shavkat get his shot at the belt. This guy does not have boring fights.
Yes, December 7th, Saturday, T-Mobile Arena, the UFC have to go big. One of the last few pay-per-views of the year. It's got to be massive. Bilal Muhammad, Shavkat Rakhmonov in the main event. That is absolutely massive. And in the co-main event, as you mentioned, Pantoja versus Asakura. Asakura, as you mentioned, traveling from Ryzen, been over in that promotion for a very long time, has had success and has held that the title in Ryzen. And we're going to find out what he can do in the UFC in his first fight inside the UFC, straight into a championship bout. I don't even know if this has ever happened before. Has someone made their debut and fought for a championship? Off the top of my head, maybe I don't even know.
You could include cases where guys came in from major promotions, like if I'm not mistaken, Rampage Jackson, or was it Dan Henderson, came in, fought for the light heavyweight title in their first fight. But yeah, it's not a usual thing that we see in this modern day. Usually we see guys, even they're champions from other promotions, they get shots like at ranked guys before they get title fights.
Yeah, so big risk, big reward for the UFC and for Asakura. If he gets the job done, spectacular stuff, history. And obviously the Japanese market will be huge for the UFC. Loads of supporters over there will be rooting for Asakura. And if he wins, I would love to see the UFC return to Japan. I think it makes a ton of sense. If some fantastic stuff. The fan base over there is ridiculous. A champion in that continent of of the region of that area would be even more massive to kind of boost the stardom. But yes, some fantastic stuff to kick off the episode. Absolutely loving it. Two title fights, as you mentioned, Nick Diaz, Luque, Gane Volkov, Ivloev, Sterling. They've absolutely stacked the card. Absolutely fantastic. Can't wait for December 7th already. They've got to go big or go home for one of the last few pay-per-views of the year. But let's talk about UFC 307 just quickly. I know we're a bit late. We don't want to be going on it for too long. I know it happened just last Saturday, but Alex Pereira in the main event against Khalil Rountree Jr. When this fight was announced, I thought, yeah, this is a dog walk for Alex Pereira. He's gonna walk all over Khalil Rountree. He's gonna have his way and knock him out in the first or second round, barely unscathed. But Khalil Rountree is a man that believes in himself, that believes in opportunities, and he went in there with nothing to lose, nothing on his shoulders. He went in there as a dangerous man, and in them first 2 rounds, there was something in the back of my mind where I'm thinking, you know what, he could actually go on to win this. But Alex Pereira showed how great he is, showed how good he is. He came. I wouldn't even say he came back, but he switched up, and he just slowly broke down Khalil Roundtree in one of the best fights I've seen this year. There's only been a few fights better than this, and that was Dean Garnett versus Lewis McGrillen. If you know, you know. But yeah, a great fight from Alex Pereira versus Khalil Roundtree. Alex, I truly believe if the question I'm asking, I want to ask you, Oscar. If Alex wasn't in UFC, never switched to MMA, how would the landscape of UFC look in these last few years, even year? He's fought 4 times for a championship in the last 11 months. I truly believe he's carrying the UFC right now.
I have to agree with you. I feel like we're in an era where we're seeing a little more decisions, a little more of wrestling taking over, and this guy's a fresh breath of air. This guy is not a point fighter. He wants to kill you whenever he goes in there. That's what he did to Khalil Roundtree. That was a hellacious beating. That was a career-altering beating that Khalil Roundtree suffered. But Khalil, before he took that beating, he showed up in the best form of his career. We've seen him lose to Marcin Prachnio. I would bet that anybody watching this probably is not too familiar with him. But Prachnio is not a high-level guy. Khalil Roundtree, whenever he's mentally at his best, whenever he's physically at his best, is one of the best fighters in the world. Alex Pereira, still with his deficiencies on the night, because they were deficiencies. He only trained for 3 weeks. He had to take antibiotics. He wasn't in his best form, but you know what champions do? They don't care if they're at their best. They show up. They perform. And Alex Pereira performed. And he got a fight of the night for his effort and got that knockout with the body shot. You don't see that too often. Khalil Roundtree showed off next level toughness in this fight. We've seen him get ran over much quicker by Kutalaba and Walker before, but in this one, he was not going to go gently into the night, and he got a lot of fans and a lot of respect from it. And Pereira now has 3 title defenses in this year, so he's the leader for fight of the year so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Some fantastic stuff from Alex Pereira. Potan, we can always count on him to bring a fight. The co-main event, though, different story. Close fight. In my honest opinion, I truly believe it was Rocky Pennington going to keep the belt. I thought she did enough. And I feel like everyone kind of agreed on that. If you look at MMADecisions.com, it was quite a landscape, a one-sided affair. Pretty much every journalist chose Rocky Pennington to get the job done, set from the judges in the arena.
Yeah, I think that this was a robbery. I don't throw around that term too often, but when you look at that first round, which determined the fight, Raquel Pennington landed the hardest strikes of that round. She landed a very solid uppercut that I thought was the deciding point. Pena didn't really land anything of consequence, and we saw the power discrepancy and the cardio advantage really weigh on Pena later. She got dropped. She got hurt with a head kick. I felt like Raquel Pennington truly outperformed her on this night. Sure, she had those 2 rounds where she got taken down, held down, but outside of that, it was Pennington who was really deciding how the fight was going. But unfortunately, that fight IQ of hers, very questionable. Never lets her hands go when it really counts. And she decided to clinch up with Pena, try a submission after getting the knockdown. She might have been able to get a TKO there had she been a little more aggressive, but she's gonna have to learn from that. She's now lost her title within less than a year from winning it. Pena, this is her 2nd title run. She called out Amanda Nunes. Nunes looks ready to come back, but honestly, I don't think that Pena fight is too interesting for her. I feel like she might be waiting for Kayla Harrison to get into the mix, and maybe we get that super fight.
Oscar knows what he's talking about. Eventually, Kayla Harrison and Julia Pena will meet. Kayla Harrison, I do believe, will take the belt, and we'll have Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes. I truly believe that's how it'll go. Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm not really impressed with both of their performances, to be honest. Kayla Harrison nor Julia Pena. But I truly believe Raquel Pennington should have got the job done. It's just really unfortunate the judges on the night didn't really see that. I feel really bad for her. I feel like she should be the champion. Everyone else agreed. Unfortunate news situation that we had there. But yeah, great fights that we had. The prelims, decent. On the main card, I was really looking forward to seeing Jose Aldo back. Mario Batista just had to do what he had to do. There were some really fights that really disappointed me. Some great performances. Obviously, Joaquin Buckley starching Stephen Thompson. Not good to see that. Stephen Thompson is an absolute you just there's some certain guys inside the UFC, inside MMA that you'd hate to see get knocked out. Stephen Thompson's one of them. He's the nicest fella in the world. But as you can see, a lot of decisions, a lot of splits. There was only a few finishes. Obviously, we started off with Court McGee and the first fight, he even get the submission. Ryan Spann getting that nasty submission over St. Preux. So yeah, a few fights, a lot of decisions. But I say the performance of the night for me was Alex Bartan Pereira, and obviously the fight of the night. But Joaquin Buckley went in there, done his thing. He got the knockout. So good stuff. Talk to me about the rest of the card. What was you impressed with? What was you not impressed with?
Yeah, I was not impressed with Mario Batista. I feel like he's public enemy number one after doing that to the greatest featherweight of all time, Jose Aldo, deciding to just stay in the clinch. And you could tell that it was a stalling technique, it was a survival technique on his part. Jose Aldo, whenever he had space to work with, he would land big shots. And you can argue that he won this fight. I won't call it a robbery, though. Bautista had a lot of control time. Delite, Kevin Holland. Delite should not have been an underdog, and he showed why. He got the takedown when he wanted it. He was having his way with Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland's rib pops out. What can you do there? But Delite, in my opinion, was going to win that fight either way. He was looking really good. Kayla Harrison, we just talked about her. She also, just like Pereira, she did not come in at her best, but she still was able to dominate large parts of this fight. Kellen Vera was able to do significant damage to her in round two, but didn't really matter. Kayla Harrison is just so physically strong, and I still think she's going to look a lot better in her next fight. She's going to win that title, take on Amanda Nunes in a big fight. And you mentioned that Joaquin Buckley got that knockout against Stephen Thompson. Wonder Boy, sure, he's 41, but he still looked really good. His movement was still there, but that durability is fading for sure. And Buckley is a very explosive guy, and he caught him. Buckley now has worked his way into the top 15, and you could argue that his next fight could even be within the top 5. That's how hot of a run he is on right now.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I'd like to see a rematch with him versus Kevin Holland. It's been ages. Obviously, they first fought in 2020. Kevin Holland, obviously, coming off the back of a loss against Roman Dolidze, the rib injury, etc. So maybe an opportunity they run that back. I know they're both on. Obviously, Kevin Holland coming off a loss, and Buckley's on a little bit of a run right now, but. I think it still makes a ton of sense, and I think they both would still say yes to that fight. But yeah, Buckley calling out everyone under the sun. I think he called out. I think he might even called out McGregor.
Kamaru Usman, he called out.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Kamaru Usman. So we'll see what happens with him down the line. But some good run that Joaquin Buckley is on. So some fantastic stuff from him. This weekend we've got a few events. We've got Octagon 62 that's going down right now in front of 60,000 fans in Germany, Frankfurt. Some fantastic stuff that the Octagon promotion are doing. It's good to see them kind of rising and trying to create records. Some fantastic stuff. Got a great main event, and we had James Hendon, Will Flurry all fighting today. Will Flurry gets the job done via a nasty knockout. James Hendon losing a close split decision, or close decision. So unfortunate, but yes, Octagon going down right now. If you want to watch something right now before the UFC, you've also got BKFC Marbella. If you want to watch on Bare Knuckle as well. So before we get that, though, we've got Royval Fight Night versus Taira. This one is a fantastic battle between two flyweights, two top 10 contenders, two that have obviously Royval's challenged for the belt a few times. Tatsuro Taira is the prospect, the one coming in hot, 16-0. I talked about a Japanese guy fighting for the belt earlier in Kaya Zakura. We have another one who could potentially meet Kaiser if it goes his way, and that's Tatsuya Taira. He's 16-0. He's looked nearly impeccable inside the UFC. He beat Alex Perez. And now he looks to take on Brandon Royval, who has that title contention, has fought for the belt a few times, has that top 5 experience. Does he beat the Japanese fighter in Tatsuya Taira? That is the question. It's a big one. Oscar, set it away.
Tatsuya Taira is a massive favorite in the main event, and we see this all the time. The guy that is on the streak versus the guy who has already had his time to shine. We usually see the guy on his way up in the favorite spot. And in this case, I do not agree with it. I think Brandon Royval is still at the top of his game. He fought for the belt less than a year ago against Pantoja. And after that, he goes to Mexico City in that ridiculous elevation. He fights the hometown guy, Brandon Moreno, and he still wins a decision quite convincingly. He did not slow down in that fight, and his experience in 5 rounds cannot be underestimated in this fight. Tatsuya Taira, no experience in 5 rounds. Has only had 3-round fights, and if we're being honest, most of these fights, he's not faced a ton of adversity. If you want to look at his entire UFC run, the guy that gave him the most problems was Edgar Chairez. Edgar Chairez is a very fun fighter, but I would not go as far as to call him an elite fighter. Tatsuya Taira was losing on the feet in that fight, and when he went to the ground, it really was a lot of a stalling, if you ask me, and he even got caught in a triangle right at the end of that fight. Who knows how far that triangle would have advanced if Chairez had more time to work. And if you're fighting Brandon Royval, you're going to have to mind your P's and Q's on the ground, because Royval is one of the best scramblers we've ever seen in this division. And he's so crafty with his submission attempts. So he could surprise Taira on the ground, because make no mistake about it, Taira wants this on the ground. That is his specialty. He loves taking the back, attempting rear naked chokes or arm bars. And Royval really has not shown a deficiency in that area. The only guy to do it to him was the champion, Pantoja. So I think Brandon Royval keeps this on the feet for the most part, and he's going to have a higher striking output, a higher pace, and he's going to effectively outbox Taira on the feet. I think his output will be too much for Taira. This is going to humble Tatsuro, and I find it kind of weird that the UFC gave the title shot to the other man from Japan, Kaya Akasura, because I felt like this could have been for a title shot. But that kind of shows you that maybe the UFC is not too confident in Taira winning this fight. So the pick is going to be Royval. I think he's a very good underdog bet.
Yeah, you never know in this game. 125 pounds flyweight is an interesting division. We've seen a lot of fighters come through in the past, and prospects, etc. This is a fantastic division. Since we got it renewed a little bit from the UFC. It's been been looking great. I'm looking forward to this fight. Brandon Royval versus Tatsuya Taira. Going to be a fantastic fight. I'm looking forward to it. Brandon Royval, as you mentioned, an underdog, a moderate underdog, plus 240 according to Tabology, minus 300 for Tatsuya Taira. The Japanese, we know what he wants to do, as you talked about. He wants to get this fight to the ground. He wants to get them submissions working. His grappling is fantastic. It's spectacular. But I've also feel like Royval is going to be able to withstand that. And as you talked about, the boxing of the Japanese Tatsuya Taira isn't the greatest. I like Brandon Royval on the feet, and I also like Brandon Royval in scrambles. I think in scrambles, it's fantastic. So I do feel like if the Tatsuya Taira, potentially try and get him to the ground, I feel like Brandon Royval can scramble his way to the feet, and then that's where he's going to have success. I completely agree on the pick with Brandon Royval. I think he's going to pick him away on the feet and scramble his way back to the feet. And this fight will, I believe that Tatsuya Taira will get this fight to the ground at one point, but I believe Royval pops straight back up. I think he's fantastic getting back up.
Yeah, I believe Brandon Royval is being disrespected, being placed as this big of an underdog. And we'll move on now to the co-main event. Brad Tavares, the longtime UFC veteran at middleweight, is taking on Jung Young Park, the South Korean Iron Turtle. Very fun to watch. I think this fight could be the last fight in the UFC for Brad Tavares, if I'm being completely honest. He's not looked too great as of late, if you ask me. He also trains at Extreme Couture. He's close with Ray Sefa, who runs the PFL. And if you look at who won the $1 million at light heavyweight as of late, it's a former opponent, Brad Tavares, Antonio Carlos Jr. He beat Carlos Jr. quite convincingly. So, Brad Tavares, if I'm him, I'd go to the PFL and I'd try to make $1 million. But back to this fight, Jung Young Park, I think, is a lot hungrier. I think his striking output will be higher in this fight. He will try to take down Tavares, I believe that, but Tavares is almost impossible to take down. If you've seen his recent fights, that takedown defense is really good. The Chris Weidman fight, Chris Weidman really struggled to take him down. You look at anybody as of late trying to take him down, Tavares is stopping him. So Jung Young Park is going to have to box him, and Tavares is a bit of a counter striker at times, and he just doesn't push the pace, in my opinion, on the feet as much as he needs to win some of these close decisions. And that's why Jung Young Park, I think, is going to win a decision in this fight.
Yeah, Jun Yun Park, fantastic fighter. If you look at his record, actually fought Shavkat Rakhmonov back in the day in 2016. Fought Ray Cooper, the third. A lot of submissions on his record, a lot of rear naked chokes, a few anacondas as well. You know what he wants to do. He wants to get the fight to the ground and he wants to submit you. His last 3 wins of all came via weight of rear naked choke. Is that a position that he can get on Brad Tavares, as you mentioned, very hard to take down. We never know. He's quite big, I would say, for the weight. Brad Tavares is a little bit bigger, 6'1" versus 5'10" at 185 pounds. Too big at 185 pounds. This is close, but yeah, I'm going to go for the younger man, the slightly fresher man in MMA, I'd say. Brad Tavares, win one, lose one, win one, lose one. Very inconsistent. Junior Park coming off a loss, but before that, it was 4 wins in a row. He's only lost to Andre Muniz, Greg Rodriguez, and Anthony Hernandez. I truly believe the South Korean man gets the job done. I agree on that pick as well. Next one, at 170 pounds, we've got Chiji Nwankwo versus Jared Gooden. This one, a battle of two fighters that have had a lot of fights in their MMA career. Chiji Nwankwo burst into the UFC scene with a fantastic knockout. Obviously on the extended series into the UFC, 16-second knockout against Monk Andre Barut. Dosko Tudovic knocked him out, then dropped 3 fights in a row, and then win that fight against Reese McKee. Jared Gooden, he's had a bit of a story to tell. Fought inside the UFC, released from the UFC, back inside the UFC now. His second debut was against Carson Harris. He dropped a decision, beat Wellington Zerman, and now he takes on Juju Duquani. This one to me is quite a tough one to call. If I'm gonna have to favour anyone, I do believe Chidri Nkwani has got enough to get the done. Oscar, which one are you going for? I think this one's a really tough one to pick, close on paper. Who you got?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Chidi and Njokuani, but I say this with hesitancy because Chidi, he started out hot in the UFC, and I didn't expect that because he even struggled in Bellator. So when he came in the UFC, he was knocking everybody out. But as soon as he started facing a little bit of adversity in that Gregory Rodriguez fight, he fell apart. Then you look at the fight with Michal Oleksiejczuk, Reese McKee. He's just having these lackluster performances. So he either looks great or he looks pretty awful, in my opinion. There's no in between. Jared Gooden, he's had a really rough first UFC run, but he worked his way back in the regional scene. You have to respect that, but I feel like Chidi is going to be the bigger man in there. Former middleweight, Jared Gooden always been a welterweight, so I think the power advantage will be on Chidi's side, and I think he gets an early finish here. If he doesn't get an early finish, we're going to see him fall apart, and we're going to see Jared Gooden potentially get a submission on the ground. But for now, I'm going to take Chidi and Njokuani to get this early knockout.
Yeah, I agree. He has power, and he has power early. I'm looking forward to that one. I'm looking to see what Chidri Nkwani can do in the first 30 seconds, minute, or even one round, and see how that plays out. Next one, 155 pounds on the main card. We've got Grant Dawson with Rafa Garcia. On paper, Rafa Garcia, he throws with intention, throws them leg kicks with a lot of power. He's got power in his hands as well. Grant Dawson, fantastic everywhere the fight goes. Striking, especially his grappling, his wrestling. We know what he wants to do. this one is probably one of the best fights I'm looking forward to of the night. Which way is it going to go? I'm highly confident Grant Dawson gets this one done. I think it's quite. He's a big favourite, and I think rightly so. I think he's the better fighter everywhere the fight goes. The only way I see Rafa Garcia getting this one is a nice check left hook with a lot of power and clipping Grant Dawson, but I just can't see that happen.
Yeah, the only reason Grant Dawson is not a bigger favorite is because of that loss to Bobby Green he had last year. Within the first 30 seconds, he got knocked out cold with a jab. So that's a major concern for his durability. Outside of that, this guy has been dominating everybody he gets in the cage with in the UFC. He's very physically strong. His technique on the ground is very good. He's a guy that usually is position over submission, but he submits a lot of guys, and I think it's gonna be the case here against Rafa Garcia. Rafa Garcia, in some of these fights, he has slowed down a little bit, and I think Grant Dawson will wear him down with that grappling early on. And I say late in the second round, he gets his back and gets him with a rear naked choke. I feel like Grant Dawson needs to make a statement if he wants to work his way back to the rankings, because he's going to be one of these guys with a style that's not going to get a lot of attention. If you look at his last fight against Joe Solecki, he was buried on the prelims. Very few people are going to remember that performance. I feel like he needs to make a statement if he wants to get another ranked fight.
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking forward to this one. KGD Grant Dawson looking to get a statement this victory this weekend. Well, today actually. Sorry. I always forget we're doing we do it on the day. Fight Night American top team 9-1 inside the UFC. He lost against Bobby Green. Returned against Joe Solecki and got the job done by unanimous decision. Now he looks to make it 2 wins back to back, and I believe he gets it done. Oscar believe he gets it done. Fantastic. Looking forward to that one this weekend. Grant Dawson versus Rafa Garcia. Next one, Daniel Rodriguez versus Alex Morono. A battle of Daniel Rodriguez. And he showcased a little bit of power in his hands, and in the future. In the past, had some devastating knockouts. Obviously, we've seen them. Obviously, them knockouts against Dwight Grant, Tim Means, etc. But as of late, 3 losses in a row, but 3 great names that is fought in a row. Neil Magny, Ian Gary, and Kelvin Gastelum. If I'm Daniel Rodriguez, obviously it's a loss. He'll be devastated about that, but I feel like you can take a lot from them 3 losses and move on. And when he fights the likes of Alex Morono, he goes in there and he gets the better of the guys. And that's what I think happens this weekend. I think he gets the better of Alex Morono. But Alex Morono has showcased a little bit of power in his hands. Who says that Morono just can't clip Daniel Rodriguez and put his lights out? You never know. We've seen that a little bit in the past. Obviously, you had that win against Donald Cerrone, but that's pretty much it actually. So I take that back. He has no power in his hands since then. It's decision. Yeah, I take that back. Daniel Rodriguez is going to win this fight.
Yeah, you said it yourself. Morono, not the biggest power puncher. In his last fight with Nico Price got folded by Robbie Lawler in Robbie's retirement fight in 30 seconds. So if you can't knock out Nico Price, I don't know what to tell you. Danny Rodriguez, very good boxer. Sure, he's had 3 losses in a row, but if you look at those opponents, those were quality opponents. One of them being Kelvin Gastelum, who decided to show up 5 pounds overweight, I think it was. So you really can't take too much away from D-Rod for that fight. He still showed up really well in that fight. Still put out a lot of volume. And Morono, on the other hand, I feel like this guy's going to retire like in a couple years. Maybe next year, quite honestly, with how poor some of these performances are. He's already a coach, already has some ownership in a CFFC, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't think he's fighting for that much. Daniel Rodriguez, I feel like, definitely has more of a chip on his shoulder. He's going to be a lot more aggressive in this fight, and he's going to win a decision. And I feel like this will be the start of him working his way back up to the rankings, because there's still some guys that I think he can beat on the feet, honestly.
Yeah, agree. Looking forward to this one. D-Rod to get the job done. The next one at flyweight, CJ Vergara versus a new debutant inside the UFC, Ramazan Tamirov. He fought inside Ryzen. He's a moderate favorite, a big favorite, 17-2. The record is pretty. He's only lost twice, as you can see in his career, and them are two. I can't even pronounce their names, but that was back in 2019. It was two back-to-back losses. Since then, he's been finishing fights. And his last two fights were in Ryzen. He finished both of them. The record is pretty. He's young. He's fighting CJ Vergara, who, to be honest, hasn't had the best run inside the UFC. He's currently 3-3. He fought Odi Osborne, Tatsu Taira, and Azu. I don't know how to say his second name, and lost all of them. And obviously, he's fought Clinton Rodriguez, beat him, Daniel Lareda or Laceda, and Vinicius Salvador. So the guys that he's meant to beat, he beat. But the guys that obviously got a better record and better than him, he loses to. I think Ramazan gets his job done. There's a lot of hype coming into him. He's a big favorite, minus 350. He's 27 years age, whereas I see CJ Vergara, 125 pounds, 33 years of age. Could see maybe he'd start to wear off a little bit, getting to the end of his career.
Yeah, so CJ Vergara, the reason he has that record, he never says no to anybody. Whenever the UFC is bringing in a guy from Eastern Europe, they call him up to lose to him most often. They also him a bio fight. He got taken down repeatedly. All these guys, they tend to beat him if they're the real deal. If they're not, he can definitely put a pace on them and sometimes even finish him. He is a quality kickboxer, but Ramazan Tarimov, I feel like he has a higher pedigree of striking. I think CJ Vergara would be wise to take this to the ground. Tamirov, I'm not so sure about his ground game, if I'm being honest. And that might be why he's training with Uriah Faber at Team Alpha in California, so he can develop that ground game. In the meantime, CJ Vergara for sure should take this ground if he's struggling on the feet, but I see Tamirov doing enough damage on the feet to win a decision. But I don't think he should be this big of a favorite. I feel like Vergara will surprise some people with his performance.
Yeah, agree. Then he has talked about he never says no to a fight, but maybe he's got to start taking some sensible fights in the future if he loses this one. That'd be two back-to-back losses inside the UFC. So if he goes in and upsets the odds and beats Ramazan, huge win for CJ. But I think Ramazan gets the job done. 125 pounds. I just love 125 pounds. They're bringing in these prospects from overseas, the Eastern Europeans, as you were mentioning. And I feel like we're seeing a lot of talent inside the UFC right now. Next one, Jonathan Pearce against Pat Sabatini. Jonathan Pearce, JSP, is a slight favourite. We've seen, not, he's 5-3 inside the UFC. Last two fights against David Onama and John Anderson at Brito. Pat Sabatini. Back in the day, I thought this guy was all about it. I thought he had a lot of talent. He's 18-5 now. He's 5-2 inside the UFC. He's coming off a loss against Diego Lopez, and that was back in 2023. Since then, he's grappled a loss against Damon Jackson as well inside the UFC. Other than that, he's looked near perfect inside the UFC. Against Jonathan Pearce, Tapology has him as a slight underdog. I feel like we could see Pat Sabatini get the job done. I truly believe that. The similar age, the only thing that Jonathan Pearce has in his favour massively is that height. He's 6 foot compared to 5'8". But I like Pat Sabatini. When he came inside the UFC, he was looking good until he ran into the people that were just better than him. So I think he gets the job done against JSP, which is a fantastic nickname. But yes, I'm going with Pat Sabatini. I think he starts another run this weekend or today.
This is a tricky fight. This is a grappler versus grappler scenario where I believe we're going to see more striking than grappling here because they could cancel each other out. But if you look at Pat Sabatini's, all of his fights, he always grapples except for the Diego Lopez fight and the Damon Jackson fights where he got knocked out very quickly. And so durability is very questionable. For Jonathan Pearce, I really like the way he fights. He's quite aggressive with those takedown attempts on the feet. Sure, he's very hittable, but I feel like he really puts it out there. And I don't feel like Pat Sabatini has shown much of a threat on the feet. So I'm going to go with Jonathan Pearce to land a little more on the feet. I think when it comes to grappling, I would say Sabatini is the stronger grappler, but in this day and age, sometimes the grappling doesn't really pay off, and the judges want to see the damage on the feet. It's very inconsistent. You never know, but I feel like Pierce is actually the rightful favorite.
Yeah, looking forward to that one this weekend. 145 pounds should be a close one to call. Looking forward to that. See who gets the job done. Next one at 170 pounds. We've got Nico Price. It's always good to see Nico Price return and fight. He's been in some absolute wild fights, in the past inside the UFC. But the problem is, he's 35 years old. The last few fights of his have not been looking great. He's had some good wins in the past. Obviously, he had wins. The crazy knockouts against James Vick, but who hasn't knocked James Vick out? Randy Brown, etc. But knocked out against Robbie Lawler, knocked against Phil Rowe, Michel Pereira lost, knocked out. Well, not finished by Vicente Luque. He got a win against Alex Morono, but Garimbo. There's a lot of I wouldn't say hype, but I don't know how to explain it. Oscar, how do you call this one?
Yeah, so I feel like there's been a spotlight on Themba Garimbo ever since The Rock gifted him a house, gave him sponsorship deals. It's hard not to root for this guy when you saw that he was living on a couch in his gym. That's all he's there to do is to train to become a champion. That's all he wants. Nico Price, on the other hand, has got mouths to feed. This guy has so many kids, it's not even funny. I think he's creeping up on 10 kids. So he's definitely working for something. But if you look at his fighting style, it's often reckless. His defense is poor. But you can argue that in his last fight, his cardio was better than Alex Morono's, and that's what won him that fight. And he's always going to be a guy you have to watch out for because if he hits you, it could be good night. You look at that Randy Brown fight. Randy Brown was on top, and he got clipped with hammer fists that put him to sleep. So for Garimbo, this is definitely one of the hardest hitters he's faced in his career. But Garimbo will have the grappling advantage in this fight. That's mainly what he does. Sure, he's gotten some knockouts, but you look at the majority of his fights, he's trying to get takedowns and go for submissions. So I feel like he's going to be the guy fighting a little cleaner out there while Nico Price is putting his neck out there more to get hit. So I think Garimbo lands big strikes on the feet. He gets a couple takedowns and wins the decision here. His last fight was quite boring. Even he said it himself, but that kind of shows just how dominant he can be if he wants to.
Yeah, Tempo Greenberg, as you talked about, big pressure on his shoulders. Obviously with the Rock, whatever you want to call it, the sponsorship, helping hand, the support from the Rock, fantastic stuff from obviously the Rock. But yeah, I'm going Grimbo. I think he gets the job done. Nico Price, he's getting older. I haven't seen a lot from him. Obviously that win against Morono, but still, I don't think I've seen a lot from him to kind of give me any confidence heading into that pick. But yeah, the pick is Temba Grimo. I think he gets the job done. The next one, we've got heavyweight. We've got Junior Tapper versus Sean Sharif. Sean, I believe, has been brought inside the UFC to fight Junior Tapper. I feel like it was hard to match Junior Tapper. He's 5-3. He's young, 28 years old. They brought in a guy called Sean Sharif, who's 31, and he's 4-0. 2-0 inside, in amateur. I think the UFC needed to bring a guy in with similar experience as Junior Tapper. I think Junior Tapper gets the win. I think that's the pick. Sean, he's old. Well, no, he's not old for he's not old for a heavyweight, but he's 31. He's 4-0 in professional, 2-0 as amateur. I think Junior Tapper gets the job done. I think Junior learns from his first 4 fights inside the UFC. He lost against Usman, he lost against De Lima, and he lost against Walter Walker. This one, I feel like, is a more winnable matchup for Junior, and I think he gets the job done. We know how good his kickboxing is, but if Sean has watched any previous fights, surely he goes in there, leg kick, leg kick, leg kick, leg kick. Tapper don't know how to check them.
Yeah, I really don't think Sean Sharaf is any good. If you look at his opposition so far, those were basically free wins that they gave him. Most of the guys were making their debut or their only fight was a loss, and he gave them their second loss. So he's had a very easy road to the UFC. You could argue one of the easiest roads of all time. That's why they bringing him in to short notice. It's a free win for Junior Tafa. Junior Tafa is going to hit him with one shot, and Sean Sharaf is going to fall over and get knocked out. I just don't see a path for Sean Sharaf to go out there because his skills, I believe, are very limited. He's not fighting guys that are any good. Junior Tafa at least fought in Glory Kickboxing. I'm not going to say he's like high level by any means. If you look at his fights, he's very limited, but at least he's got more experience in real kickboxing. And Sean Sharaf has not shown any grappling that matters. So Junior Tafa is going to be the pick all day.
Yeah, Junior Tafa also got a win in Ryzen and Brave, so two formidable promotions. I'm looking forward to this one. I think Junior Tafa gets the job well, and I think we see a big knockout and early. I think it's going to be a big one. Next one at 115 pounds, women's Corey McKenna versus Julia Polistri. Polistri. That's what we're going to go for. Corey McKenna was a big. I'd say a big prospect when she came inside the UFC, especially from this area where I am, in Europe, especially out of Britain. She won, the Cage Warriors Championship. She went on to the Contender Series against Vanessa Demopoulos, got the job done, beat Kay Hansen, but she got slowed down a little bit. The hype a little bit with Ellis Reed, then came back and beat Miranda Granger, Cheyenne Vlismus, and then lost last fight against Jacqueline Normie. I don't know what her ceiling is. Still a lot of question marks for me for over. I don't know how far she's going to make it inside the UFC, but she takes on a Brazilian who's 2-0 inside LFA. Sorry, she fought in a Contender Series twice and 1-1, and now she's coming off a loss against Josephine Knutson, 7-0 decision. This one I do believe is an even matchup, as you can see here by the odds. Corey McKenna is near even, plus 110, minus 1330. Favorite is Julia. I don't know how this one's going to go. Julia has got a lot more reach, according to Tapology, than Corey McKenna. Corey McKenna isn't the biggest of women. Her arms ain't really that long either. The reach could play a big factor in this one. If I'm going to pick anyone, I think I'm going with Julia, but with not a lot of confidence. This one could probably go 10 different ways.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with the way of Corey McKenna getting takedowns in every round and securing a position, getting control time, doing some work from on top. I think she's going to win this fight by decision. Julia Polastri in her Contender Series fight with Jasmine Jestovicius, she got taken down a lot in that fight, and she looked helpless at certain spots. I know it's going to be a struggle for McKenna to close the distance with that reach discrepancy, but I think eventually she does so. And on the ground, I do think that she can hold her down. Polastri, if she had a little more jiu-jitsu, you could see her tapping out Corey McKenna because she's lost to that before in her last fight. She got tapped out with an armbar. So I don't think Polastri has much off of her back, and that's why I'm taking McKenna here. But it's totally realistic to pick Polastri winning a decision, landing more on the feet. This is going to be one of those fights where the judges are going to have to weigh the difference between control time and strikes on the feet. It's going to be one of those classic ones.
Yeah, 100% agree. I'm going with Gino, you're going with Corey. Let's see how it turns out this weekend. Next one, 135 pounds. Second fight of the evening. We've got Dan Argueta versus Cody Haddon. Cody, 7-1, Australian, making his UFC debut, as you can see there, 0-0. Dan Argueta, a familiar face that we see inside the UFC, 1-2. A must-need win for Dan. He's looking to get his, get a little momentum coming over now. He needs this one. He's called the Determined. He's nicknamed the Determined. Will the Determined get the win this weekend?
I think so. I think this is your classic case of a guy looking good on Contender Series against an opponent that wasn't overly high level, and then they go to the UFC and they fight a guy who's a lot more of a veteran, and they get put in this favorite spot. I don't think it's right. I think Dan Argueta is a quality fighter. He was on the Ultimate Fighter when it was Volkanovski versus Ortega as coaches. Brian Battle won that season. and Ricky Tercios won that season as well. He trains with Cub Swanson. He's really uh, he's really tenacious in there with those takedown attempts. And to his detriment, in his last fight, he got caught in a guillotine against John Matsumoto. But if you look at the fight with who was it with, where he got a bunch of takedowns against a guy who was known for wrestling. I think he can do that to Cody Haddon here. Cody Haddon, his wrestling looked really great in his last fight, but he was fighting a guy who was more of a striker. So Dan Agreda is going to give him more problems than he's ever had to deal with. So I believe Dan Agreda should be the favorite here. He's going to win a decision with his wrestling.
Yeah, he's 1-2 inside the UFC, but obviously he's had more fights than that. 2 no contests inside the UFC, so he's a lot of experience inside the UFC. And I'm rooting for that man. I think he gets the job done. He's a slight underdog according to Tabology, but Cody maybe has a lot of hype. Sorry, coming out of Australia, 7-1 in his record so far. Obviously, been on a contender series this year. Got the rear naked choke. His only loss actually comes to Steve Erceg, and that was back in 2021 when he was 2-0. He took on a Steve Erceg who was 6-1 at the time. So a big risk that fight was. Let's see how he gets on this weekend against Argeta. Big pressure for Cody, big pressure for Dan in a must-win fight for Dan. Let's see how it goes down this weekend. But I'm also, agreeing with that pick. Another one at 125 pounds, we have Clayton Carpenter versus Lucas Rocha. Clayton Carpenter, 7-0. A perfect record. He's looking good so far in his career. He had fights. Edgar Chairez wins that. He had a fight against Juan Camilo Rondoros. He won that one by rear naked choke. Had a fight with Steve Erceg, and it was cancelled. What could have been? We would never know. Now he takes on a Brazilian who's 17-1. He's had a lot of fights in his career off the back of a win in the contender series last year. Tough one for me to call. His only loss in his career was a knockout loss in 2019. Since then, a lot of fights, a lot of finishes. He likes to finish the fight, whether that's by rear naked choke or by flying knee. We've seen a lot of them in the past. Which way does this go? The American or the Brazilian?
Clayton Carpenter, sure, he has a limited record, but I feel like he's proven himself more to me than Lucas Rocha has. Rocha had a really great knockout on Contender Series, no doubt about it, but Clayton Carpenter, that win over Edgar Chairez says a lot about him. I dumped a little bit on Edgar Chairez early on in the show, sure, but there's no doubt that the guy is a very dangerous fighter, and he has skills on the feet and on the ground. So for Clayton Carpenter to do very well in that fight, I think says a lot about him. I think he's going to be the better wrestler in this fight, and that's going to be the key to victory here, getting those takedowns on the feet. I think he can still handle himself quite a lot. It's been a while since we've seen him fight, and usually for aging guys, that's a concern, but when we're talking about these young prospects, they're probably showing up a better version of themselves rather than a guy with ring rust. So Clayton Carpenter is the guy you want to pick here. Lucas Rocha, I feel like is a bit limited in his skill set. I feel like he's on the smaller side for this division too, even at 125. So I think Clayton Carpenter is a little more physical in there. He's the rightful favorite at 2-1.
Yeah, a good one to call. The first fight of the evening at 125 pounds in the flyweight division. It's going to be fantastic. Clayton Carpenter, the favorite. I'm looking for him to get the job done. 7-0. A tough one to call though. 125 pounds. You never know where it's going to go. A decent event for the Apex. But it's there's only one really fight that I'm looking forward to, and that's the main event. Brandon Royval versus Taira. Few fights on there that I'll have my eye on. Grant Dawson, Rafa Garcia, but I will be there to watch the event nonetheless. I can't help it and watch the fights. Oscar, fight tonight. Fight you're looking most forward to, which is that?
Well, Ben Davis and Oscar Willis, I think, is going to be a banger in BKFC. But if we're not talking about that, if we're talking about these other guys, I'm going to have to go with Chidi and Jokawani and Jared Gooden, just because I believe were guaranteed a finish in that fight.
Yeah.
And both guys relatively not known for their boring fights. So I think we're going to get a first round knockout from Chidi Njokuani in that fight. So look out for that one. And we'll talk about Riyadh season, the fight going down this afternoon. Artur Beterbiev versus Dmitry Bivol, two undefeated guys fighting for the 4 belts at light heavyweight. So I believe this is the one that even MMA fans should go out of their way to watch, because it's probable that you have an ESPN Plus subscription, and with ESPN Plus you can watch this fight. Obviously, if you're in the UK, this is also free of charge as well. So I say go out of your way to watch these two undefeated killers go at it. Lenny, why does this fight stick out to you?
Yeah, you pretty much put the nail on the head there. They're absolutely two killers. Artur Beterbiev, one of the best fighters I've seen in the world currently, and Dmitry Bivol, one of the best fighters that I've seen in the world currently right now. Artur Beterbiev come off a fantastic win against Callum Smith, Anthony Yard, Joe Smith, Bivol. Everybody knows who this man is. He's the man to stop not even stop, stop the hype, stop the momentum of Canelo Alvarez. He beat Saul at his own game. He boxed him, outsmarted him. Bivol is no joke. This one is a battle between technicality. Who's got the better brain? And we're going to find out later tonight. This one, for me, is one of the most interesting fights that we have this year. If you're a boxing purist, a boxing fan, you have to be watching. It might not be the greatest pace. It might not be the most exciting fight. But what we're watching inside this fight this week, well, tonight, what we're watching inside that ring tonight will be a chess battle. Will be a who's got the aces, who's got blackjack. That's what we're gonna be finding out this weekend. Well, tonight, sorry. It's a battle between two of the best boxers in boxing right now. And we've had Usyk, Fury. This one is up there. Riyadh season, the Saudis are doing some fantastic thing for boxing, and this is another staple, another one to add to the list. This one is going to be fantastic, and I can't even tell you who I think is going to win because I have no idea.
The pick for me is going to be Artur Beterbiev, because I believe he has a little bit of a power advantage in this fight. Sure, he's an aging guy, but this guy still walks forward and swings those bombs, and I think that will sway the judges ever slightly. He's an underdog in this fight, very slightly, but obviously Bivol, he has earned his respect, beating Canelo Alvarez. But I'm gonna go with Beterbiev here.
Yeah,
but honestly, don't go out of your way to bet this one, because it's gonna be that close.
Yeah, you talked about Artur Beterbiev getting older, but I believe he's getting stronger and better with age. He's not having that many fights a year. One in 2022, one in 2023, one in 2024 thus far. This will be his second. The last time he had 2 fights in a year was 2021. So he's not been super active, but every time he stepped inside the cage, he's dominated and he's stopping a lot of people. You talked about it there. A lot of pressure. He made Anthony Yard, the corner stoppage, towel thrown in. He stopped Joe Smith. He stopped Callum Smith, who was a corner stoppage. He's making a lot of these people, a lot of these boxers, get on the stool and not want to get back up and go out there again, fight him. That could be what we could see later. We could see, I truly believe Dmitry Bivol will probably go out on his feet, go out as a champion, go out on his shield. But Artur Beterbiev is making these boxers not want to get up from the stool and not go out there. So this guy is absolutely dangerous. Bivol, his brain in the boxing world is fantastic. I can't tell you how this is going to go because I have no idea. You're going to have to watch out and watch and find out live on DAZN, I believe, in the UK. If you're in the UK, I don't know what's live on in the USA, maybe ESPN.
Yeah, ESPN Plus or DAZN. Either way, the undercard starts up in a half hour, so we should wrap this up. I do want to place a spotlight on Skye Nicholson. I believe she's one of the best up-and-coming female talents in the boxing world. She could go down as an absolute legend if she keeps up this momentum. she was an Olympic boxer, and now she's just put away all of the competition. Looks better every time she goes out there. Ariel Hawani made sure to spotlight her early, so I think he knows what he was talking about because she's gone on to just look incredible.
Yeah, absolutely agree. That's pretty much it. That pretty much rounds it up. I talked about Article 66, 62, sorry. If you have nothing to watch from now until the UFC, make sure you're watching Article 62, BKFC, Artabetubiev Bivol, all them events to gear you up, to lead you up to the UFC later tonight. Oscar, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. It's great to catch up with you and talk to some fights again. Thank you very much. And next weekend, I can't think of what we've got.
We've got UFC Vegas 99. It's going to be Michel Pereira versus Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. That is a quality main event.
And obviously, we do have Francis Ngannou versus Henna Pereira.
That completely slipped my mind, but that has been a very anticipated fight for me. It's been forever since we've seen Francis Ngannou fight in an MMA cage. Last time we saw that was against Cyril Gane in January of 2022, I believe it was. So it's been a long time, almost 3 years now, and we're finally going to see it.
Yep, and in that fight, we saw Francis Ngannou utilize his grappling. It's been a long time outside the cage. I think there's going to be a little bit of rustiness for Francis Ngannou, but he hasn't not been active. He's been boxing, so I feel like it won't be a lot of rust. I think it will take about a few minutes to kind of utilize him around the octagon again, and then I think he'll be straight back into it. But you know what this guy is all about. He starts fast, he hits hard, but so does his opponent, Henna Pereira. And I do feel like we're going to see a bit of a similar fight like we did, Francis Ngannou versus Cyril Gane. I think Francis Ngannou just shows how good he is and utilizes his grappling again, and potentially just kind of controls him, and then maybe a knockout in the later rounds.
The full breakdown will be next week, ladies and gentlemen, and there's a lot of meat on the bone there, so we'll go deeper next week. But as I said, make sure to tune in for the breakdown of UFC Vegas 99 as well. The road to UFC Vegas 100, 100 events, the Apex. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? Honestly, I can. I think the UFC needs to abandon the Apex altogether, use it for Contender Series and Ultimate Fighter only, but that's just me. That might just be me.
No, I completely agree with you. I don't like the Apex whatsoever. I wouldn't even mind it if the UFC were going to countries I've never heard of, as long as we've got 100 fans in there, 500 fans in there, 1,000 fans in there. Let's just get some fans in the arena. It's different feeling. I feel like the fans, myself, if I'm watching on TV, I look forward to it because it just brings a different energy. It brings something different, rather than the Apex, where I can hear Bisping twice, one from the commentary and one from the actual stream, and it's different. I don't like it. The Apex, I feel like, has been overused, but I could talk about this all day. We're going to let you all go. An absolute pleasure to be joined all by you by today. Make sure you catch us next week, as we've been talking about, where we talk about UFC Vegas 99 and obviously PFL Super Fights. Thank you very much for joining us. Oscar, let's send them all away.
Enjoy the fights, folks.